Hi guys, so in today's video I'm going to show you how to do your very basic friendship bracelet knots, and I'm talking about woven friendship bracelets, which are essentially macrame bracelets, right? Very old school name, and that's what it is. It's kind of funny, I was working on this bracelet here and I had just bought a couple of hammocks, and they do the exact same braiding, for the loops to hold your hammock up. And I thought that's very interesting because that's what all it is, like making fishnets, all these things use basically the same kinds of knots. So it's very, very old school, I would say, even ancient kind of weaving, right? But we're just going to jump right to it. So what I want to talk about a little bit is what we're going to do in this video. In this video, I'm going to talk about the basic knots, which are essentially half hitch knots, which when you do two of them makes a hitch knot, and that's what you're going to be working. There are forward knots, backward knots, and combinations of those. Those are also called right hand knots, left hand knots. We'll talk about that in case you come across a pattern and you're like, well, what do they mean by this? Because we'll talk about what patterns look like. If you go to something like friendshipbracelets.net, which I love that resource. They have the cutest patterns. If you start making things like alpha bracelets, I mean, there's just lots of things you can do with these knots, and that's where you have to start, is knowing the knots, right? So, and how to read a pattern if you're going to do that. So we'll talk about that just a little bit, but this is going to be a very basic tutorial showing you how to make the actual knots. I'm going to use bigger yarn so you can see it really well, and then we'll do a Chinese staircase bracelet, just because they're so easy to do, and it just gets your confidence going and gets your creative juices flowing, so we'll do that. So if there are any items that I can link in the description box, those would be affiliate links, which means I'll make a small commission if you purchase items to those links. I assume pretty much most people have embroidery floss or embroidery thread somewhere in their stash. And if not me, you can find it anywhere, everywhere. So I'll have a couple links for you guys there in the description box, possibly in the little shopping bag that YouTube does. But we're going to jump right to it. So essentially what I'm going to show you to make all these knots is I'll show you something that looks kind of like a chevron bracelet, because you're doing forward knots and you're doing backward knots. And when you get in the center, you're going to do a combination of either forward and backward or backward forward, whatever it is that you prefer. So we're going to talk about all four knot types. Very easy. Once you got it, I mean, it's like riding a bike. You don't forget, even if it's been many, many years. I know several people have like books on them, the stuff that we learned on the playground. So, you don't have to really invest much. There's tons of videos in the world. I just want to show you some, using some yarn so you can see it really closely and really well. Generally, if you're making friendship bracelets, honestly, it doesn't even matter what kind of friendship bracelet you're making. People usually like to use 36-inch lengths of thread. If you're going to just double it like in a loop, you're going to want at least 72 inches because you're going to fold it over, right? So 72 inches, and then you just fold it over. So it's going to be 36 and 36 inches on either side. That's just the general rule of thumb, 36 inches a yard or 2 yards, and then fold it over. So that's something to keep in mind whenever you're going to start a friendship bracelet and you're thinking, like, how much do I need? Now, if you have a really thick bracelet, or like it's going to be really wide, it is possible you're going to need much more, right? So that's something you can calculate, but you can do that later, okay? Right now, initially, if you're just learning, let's just get started with something more simple. So that's generally the rule of thumb. You're going to use 36-inch lengths or 72-inch lengths doubled over. I did the same thing with this Chinese staircase, and I have this much left, and I know it feels like waste, but you know what? When you're first beginning, it's better to have more than to not have enough. Also, I made this too large for my daughter. I was making it for her. If it's me, so I'm going to keep this one and make her one in today's video at the end after we learn our knots, okay? So again, this was 36 inches, and it's a ton of waste, right? We're going to do a little braiding, but you're still going to have a ton left. So something to think about once you start going and you start understanding how the bracelets work. But generally, rule of thumb is 36-inch strips or 72-inch pieces doubled over. I'm going to use a little bit of yarn, so I'm just going to pull out a length. I mean, we don't need the whole thing for this. I'm not going to pull out a whole yard and waste that. But let me go ahead and just get some yarn length going. I chose pink, yellow, and black because they contrast, I feel like. I know black is hard to read online, like the image might not be super easy to see, but hopefully it'll be okay. So I'm just going to grab maybe 1.5 feet just to show you guys. So I'm going to cut a couple pieces from each color. Again, if you double it over, I'm going to make it so that we have the 3 colors. I need 2 strings of each. Okay, so 2 36-inch strands of each, but right now I'm going to do 2 like 18-inch strands just for the example, but I'll be right back, guys. So again, I'm going to show you basically how to do a chevron. So I mean, I'm going to show you all the knots. If you want to make a chevron bracelet, you can definitely do that. We'll talk about that later though. So I have 2 of each color here, and I mean, you can set it up nicely. Basically what you're doing for the chevron is bringing the colors in, and then they meet at the middle. So you usually do pair of colors. Right now we're going to learn our knots, so I'm not trying to focus on the chevron bracelet, but it's going to be very similar, so that this makes sense to you guys. So these are the 4 knots. Your forward knot, some people call it a right hand knot, and that just means you're moving your thread forward. You're working in this direction, right? Towards the right. The other very basic one is your backward knot, or your left hand knot, and that means you're working from this side going to the left, okay? And you are doing the knots in the opposite manner. There are 2 other knots that are very fun that'll help you do all kinds of patterns and things, you know, to keep your thread where you need it to be, which are the forward backward and the backward forward. And this is what they look like if you're on like friendshipbracelet.net or companies that use, you know, or websites that use the symbols. So you're going forward, then backward. You're going backward, then forward. So as I mentioned earlier, you're doing half hitch knots, that will make a hitch knot. So you can imagine for this one, you're going to do 2 knots to complete it. So every time you do a forward knot, that means you're doing 2 of the same movement to complete the knot. So you're doing half at a time, so half hitch. So to make a full hitch, you have to do it twice. So with these guys that are forward backward or backward forward, you're doing the first knot going in the forward direction, and then the second part of it, because remember you have to do the 2 ties basically to make the 1 knot, you're going to go backward. And on this one, you're going backward, and then the second time that you do your knot, you're going forward. And with these guys, it's just 2 backwards. So we will talk about all about that right now. So I was just going to tape these down like this, but you know what? I'll go ahead and tie a knot. But if you're going to set it up for a chevron, it's nice to kind of get your strings in a way that makes sense. So with basically the chevron, you're doing your pattern, and then you're going to reverse the pattern. So you're going backwards when you lay them out, but that doesn't matter as much right now. And also I'm just going to tie a knot. You know, with the Chinese staircase one, I just tied a knot, and then I'm going to braid it because that looks cute. You can just do that. You can start with a loop, so you just make a loop, and that's going to be one of your ends is the loop, and then you're going to work with your threads. But for right now, I'm just going to tie a knot. Again, you know, I arrange them in color pattern order, but sometimes when you do your knots and other things, it just does not stay. So it's not a big deal. You just arrange them when you're ready to. So again, they're kind of there. If you're making a chevron, you would do the exact same thing. You want the exact same, you know, pink, pink, yellow, yellow, black, black, or whatever your pattern is. I'm going to tape this down. What's funny is I had packaging tape sitting here yesterday, and of course it's not here now. I'm like, I would love packaging tape because I know it's going to hold it really, really well. But let's try some of this washi tape, and if it doesn't hold it, I'll move on to something else. And we're just going to start with the knots. So I want to tape this up high enough so you guys get a good view of what I'm doing. So let me tape this up here. I really need you guys to see the length of the thread of what we're doing. So it's really nice when we make the Chinese staircase, you're just doing forward knots or you're just doing backward knot, whatever you like. If you want to practice them, I suppose you can switch them out, do a set in, a set backward, a set forward, a set backward. I usually do the same all the way down. You can see how nice the bracelet turns out. So I think interchanging forward, you know, this is all forward, this is all backward, this is all forward, it might make it look funky. So I would just recommend sticking to the one. Maybe do a whole bracelet all forward, maybe do a bracelet all backwards, so you're learning your knots, right? The point of the forward backward and the backward forward knot is that it keeps your thread in the same order where you had it, right? Because you move forward, but you also move back, or you move back and you also move forward. So you're always leaving that thread. When we're doing forward knots, this pink is going to end up at the end because we're using it the whole time moving forward. If you're doing backward knots, this one on the right is going to end up in the front because you're always going backward, backward, backward. So manipulating these is how you get these cool patterns, right? Or, well, alpha bracelets don't really need that as much, but this little alpha bracelet I showed you I actually made for my son when he was like 4, and he wore it like the whole year, and he's 14 now, so he'll be 15 very soon. So they hold up really well. I mean, what's nice about braiding and being able to take them off is that you can take them off, so you don't have to leave them on in the shower and stuff like that. But, you know, you can definitely do that for the summer, and you're supposed to tie a friendship bracelet on your friend, and until it falls off, they're supposed to wear it. Like, it falls off naturally, right? So anyway, so again, lots of ways to begin these. The point of this video is to show you the knots. So I'm going to do a series of both of these or all these things because I'm showing you the different knots, and I'm showing it to you in a chevron pattern. Otherwise, I would just go all the way left, all the way right, which you can do. I'm just going to mix them. So forward knot or your right knot. You're always taking the outermost two strands, or, you know, either way, if you're doing the right hands or the left, left hand or right hand. I always want to call these left. It's because of the L. I don't know. But I guess they're traveling to the right, so that's why it's right. I don't know. I didn't name these things, all right? So here we go. We're going to start with forward knot. So we're taking these two, and you're going to keep one kind of taut. I mean, you're not pulling it super hard, but you're just holding that in your hand. The other one is going to come over that first string. Well, now it's the second string, right? So the first one, and see how I switch my hands? It's just, you know, once you start working this, you're going to get into your groove of what you like to do. So that second string, you're just holding it. This guy is going to go over that string, so it makes like a number 4. You see that? 4. And then this goes under that second string, because you're going to make it out. My finger's in there because that's just how I do it to hold it taut. And then let it go and pull this up. Just hold on to this guy and pull this up. However tight you do it the same way every time. That's why everyone's friendship bracelets look slightly different or whatever, because of your tension, right? But do it the same every time. So I'm not pulling it super tight, because if you do pull it super tight, it's going to be so like small, this little bump, that it's just almost non-existent. So, you know, I pull it up, and that's fine. That's a half hitch. Now we're going to finish it, because you got to do it twice. So again, I'm still holding this, and I just like to hold this in my opposite hand, which is my left hand, my non-dominant hand. And again, bring it forward, like over here this way, make that number 4 across, and pull it up under that knot, and we're going to complete our hitch knot. So that's all you do. And that pulls it. Again, not super tight. And now your thread wants to be on the right. It goes to the right. They like switch places essentially, right? So now we're going to take our next color, the next string, which for me is the black one, and I'm do the same thing. So I'm holding my thread, and again, I like to hold it in my non-dominant hand and kind of catch this, make that number 4 up under. We're going to do our first half hitch and the second one. So to finish it off, just do the same thing. Your thread is already on the right, but don't get confused by that. Just do your thing. So cross over and under and finish it off. That is your hitch knot completed, okay? For this bracelet, or for this example, we're going to stop here, because now I'm going to do the exact same thing, but with backward knots. So left knots, or left hand knots. So right here, we still have the 3 strands. They're over here. They kind of want to go this way anyway, just because of the way we're working. So I just want you to see that they're going this way. So now let's work on backward knots. And a backward knot, or your left hand knot, is essentially the same. We're going to start over here. I'm still holding this in my non-dominant hand, my second string, right? Our outermost string is our working string. A lot of times people talk about working strings. Working strings are the ones that are actually doing the knots, right? So that was weird. Siren just stopped like right there. I can hear that it stopped right there, but anyway. So let's work our backwards. So you're taking this, and instead of, obviously you're not making the number 4, you can't. You're going to make a backwards 4, or maybe like a P if it was round, right? If it was rounded. It looks like a capital P. I don't know. But I still hold this in my non-dominant hand. I kind of bring this up. I use my fingers to help me out, but you're just essentially going to the left over the string, your non-working string. You're going to bring that loop out and pull it all the way up. Now you might have things in the way. It's always going to look funky at the beginning, guys. That's the other thing about bracelets, because it needs to make its room. But anyway, all the way up, right? And do it the same tension that you've been doing. Now we're going to finish that. That was our half. So now we're going to do the same thing, backwards 4, or a P. So up over that guy, underneath, into your loop, and finish off that hitch knot. So there we go. And again, you're switching places. So this one's going to want to go this way, and this one's going to want to go to the left. It just happens. You'll see once you start working them. Now I'm going to take that middle black one, not the one that we worked on, but the one that's to the left, because we mirrored what we're doing. Again, I'm holding in my non-dominant hand. I'm going to have my fingers kind of help me make that backwards 4 or a P over into this space there, holding this guy kind of taut, and then pull that guy up, and we got to finish it. So again, that is your backward or left hand knot. Super easy, and then pull all the way up. So what are we going to do now that we have our working strands from the left and our working strand from the right are here in the center? They have to join together. And essentially that's how you make a chevron, but I'm trying to show you the different knots. So that's why I thought this pattern would be good for learning that. In the center, these guys have to meet up right here, right? Right down the center. So this is your choice, your preference, if you want to do a forward backward knot or a backward forward knot. So a right left or a left right. Okay, so forward backward. If you're doing forward backward, that means you have to use the working string from the left side over here, and then hold the other guy taut. So essentially that's your second string that you're working on, and you're going to go forward, which again it was do the number 4. They always go on top of the strand that you're just holding. So it's always back here. It's not behind, right? So back here, I'm sorry, on top, and then we're doing a forward half hitch because we're only do half forward, and now you know our string, the one we were working, is on our right hand. You're going to go backward. So now we're going to still hold this guy, still my non-dominant hand, and we're going to make a backward, the backward 4 part of it. So to finish it off, and what that does is it puts your string back to the left. So essentially your string didn't move. We went forward and we went back, and that just arranges it nicely so you have this kind of configuration. I'm going to do it one more time. I should get a little bit closer so you guys can see. What I'm going to do is get the camera a little bit closer. I just want you to see the ends of the string, but let's get a little bit closer. Now our pink ones are here, and essentially our working strings are these guys out here, right? So forward, and we're going to go forward on these 2, leave in the center, backward on these 2, leave in the center, right? So forward, you need your 4. And you only do 1 knot. We'll talk about doing more knots at once, but we're going to do 1 knot on this string and then move on, right? We're not going to do more than 1 knot on this string. That string is done. Now we have the middle one, because essentially that's the middle one now. And we're going to do our forward half, forward finish. So every time you make a knot in friendship bracelet tying, it's 2. It's 2 of the same thing, right? Or a combination. Okay, now we're going to do our backward knots. I know it's getting kind of hectic over here, but that's okay. At the beginning it's always kind of crazy, and then it gets better. So we're going to do our backward knot. So again, have my non-dominant hand holding that string. We're going to make a backwards 4 over it, and you're doing your half, and then you're going to complete it. So do the same thing again. That's our backward knot, and then now we got to do it on the pink string. So I bring my working thread over. It's going that way anyway, making your half and completing it. So earlier in the last one where they met up, I showed you how to do a forward backward, and now we're going to do a backward forward just to show you, and it's just your preference. So I would do the same thing every time though. Let's say you're making your bracelet, I always do a left, a forward backward, forward backward, forward backward, and they meet. Doing a combination of them might make it look kind of wonky later, so you're always trying to do the same thing, but I'm trying to show you the different knots. So this time I'm going to do backward forward, and essentially it's the same, but you know, I'm going to use this guy in my right hand, my right string as the working string. So this one I'm just holding it. We're doing a backward, which is the backward 4 or a P. Bring it through, underneath and through. So that's backward, and now it's on this left side. I'm still using that same working string, and I'm going to do a forward. So again, like a 4, right, on top of this guy. And that is your backward forward. And once you start getting really good at making bracelets and reading patterns, you're going to need to know those, because a lot of patterns do require left and right, you know, or right and left kind of knots. Hopefully you can see what's happening here. It's already looking like this, but very basic, right? Sorry. And to me, this is the front of the friendship bracelet. This is the back. Some people like to wear them like this, with this part showing. This is the back of your bracelet. But if you like the look of that, then wear it that way. It doesn't matter. Whatever you like. So now here we are. And I'm going to do one more round just to show you really clearly. So I'm going to do this one a little bit quicker. Forward with the working string. That's the outermost string, usually. So forward, we're gonna finish it. Forward, that's the half. And then you gotta finish it, so you're always doing 2 knottings or 2 tyings. We're gonna leave that for now. Now I'm gonna do 2 backwards. So backward, that's the first one, that's the second one. Whenever you're doing a chevron, I do like to take them, and then again for this one, backward, 1 and 2. What I like to do is try to arrange it a little bit before you keep moving on, because at the beginning it's always going to look kind of weird. It just has to get the pattern going. If you did a knot, if you did a buckle loop like I did in the other one, if you just left the strands there and just taped them down, you're going to have to work that out, right? And so sometimes what I'll do is I'll just kind of go like this and kind of get it in its shape, because essentially this string you can still pull it, right? The other one's just kind of on it. Something to think about. Okay, and now that I'm back in the center, I always like to do forward, backward. So left hand string going over the one on the right, forward, and now backward. Same working string, backward, here. So hopefully that's making sense, guys. Super easy. You can see what it's doing. It's already making that. I mean, this is yarn. I wouldn't wear this. I wouldn't use that for friendship bracelet making, but I just wanted you to really see those V's shaping up and how to do your forward knot, which is what we call a right hand knot. Your forward backward, meaning going right and then left, or however. Your backward forward, meaning going left and right, and then your backward knot going to the left. Okay, and that's what they look like if you see symbols, and hopefully you'll understand. Once you start seeing them and you understand it, you'll just know. So that is the essential basics of your knotting. I want to do maybe 5 or 6 videos in this series, so that's that. I'll show you different ways to begin them, different ways to end them in other videos. But for right now, I just wanted you to have the basics of the knots, and I'll remove that. And you would just keep going, and essentially you're making a chevron. So if you want to just follow that, you can definitely do that. I like my chevrons to be a little chunkier, especially when you're using floss. So I did 2 of each color. 2 pink, 2 purple, 2 like an ecru color, and then of course reverse that. I did do some 2-inch links that were folded in half, and I made this kind of buckle, but we'll talk about that later. That's just a series of making forward knot, backward knot, and you don't even finish it. You just do one side forward, one side backward, I believe, and so basically forward, backward knots, and it looks really nice, but we'll talk about that later. So lots of things to do, but you can definitely make your own bracelet just with those knots that we just talked about, tying them off. Okay, so lucky for me, I do have a Chinese staircase ready to go, so I'm going to show you how I'll finish that, but I'm starting it real basic. What I did with this one, again, was... So I used 6 colors, just the rainbow order, Roy G. Biv, you know. So there are 6 strands. These I don't double up unless you want to double them up and maybe, you know, whatever your colors are. I mean, you can do a whole strand of just one color. If you're going to do that, like I'm going to use 2 colors in this one, you definitely want a few strands of thread. If you just have one, or let's say 2 pieces, and you're using the one going around the other one, it's going to be really skinny. But if that's what you want, then do that. I like 6, I like 5, you know, more threads, because essentially what you're doing is you're wrapping, it's like hair wrapping if you've ever done that, but you're just wrapping these threads around the bundle that you started with. So 6 threads feels really nice. I think that's a really nice thickness, so I'll do the same thing. These are, again, 36-inch pieces, but you can see how much I have left over. So to be honest, for this one, I think I'm going to do 27-inch pieces or so, just to not waste so much, just to like 9 inches shorter, but whatever you want, that works for you. So, and I do want 6 strands. Now we can fold them over, but what I'm going to do is 3 of this rainbow color, I think it's fun, and 3 black, just to have the 6 bundled up in there. So hopefully I can pull these guys out. Sometimes you're pulling them and it's like, oh no, that's not what I wanted. It starts unraveling in a weird way. Okay, so like I said, roughly 27 inches of thread, and I'm going to do 3 black and 3 of this color, and I'll be right back. I don't measure them all out. I kind of just eyeball, like for me, I just kind of pull the length of like my arm plus some, maybe my arm to like my chest, and that's how I measure. So, but once I get one cut, then I just cut them all the same. So like I'll add up the ends there or meet them up and just get to pulling that out. It's so funny, it seems really short, this length of thread. I'm like, ooh, but it's just a little bit shorter, and again, I just had so much waste over here, and you know, after a while, I don't like wasting. I know there are patterns to like help you with waste threads, but that's not my favorite. So anyway, I'm gonna work with it here. I'm gonna get another piece of washi. Different ways to start them. I like to braid them at the end, so I'm just gonna leave myself a little bit. So again, I have 3 of each black and that rainbow, and I'm gonna braid this at the end. Don't worry about it right now. Of course, like I said, we can fold them over. There's lots of ways to start it. Let's do something simple and easy just to get you started. With these, it doesn't even matter what order these are in your hand. You just want a bundle of them. And there's like maybe 3 or 4 inches left up there. If you want more left up there to braid easier, then go ahead and do that. But I know how I can work this, so it's not a big deal. You can tie this knot down. Also, there's friendship bracelet makers, which are basically something to help you hold the knot. You know, I'll link a couple that I like, that I work with, or like I have my daughter working with, or however. It is nice when you have something, like right now obviously I'm at my table, so it's nice to just tape it down and work here, but when I go to sit on my couch, you can put a safety pin through the knot, stick it to your pant leg. Most time in the summer I'm wearing shorts, and they're usually pretty short shorts, so I don't have that, but stick it on a pillow, clipboard, you can clip it to a clipboard, you know, there's lots of different ways to use them, or to make them. So anyway, I'm just going to tape this here. And all we're going to do here is a series of knots, of forward knots. If you want to practice your right hand knots, your left hand knots or your backward knots, then just do those. But I'm doing forward because that's just the easiest, to be honest. I think it's the easiest for everybody, I don't know why. But if you want to practice them, I would definitely just focus on one, focus on another bracelet, all backward or however. Just pick a color to start with. So let's say I start with this rainbow color. Now, again, with this one I wanted a rainbow order, so I pulled out a red one. I did red, I did orange, I did yellow. Most of the time people like to do 5 knots of each color. It looks the cutest. You can do it all one color, it doesn't matter. Like even right now that I use these, I can still kind of go with it. Obviously the thread you're working with is going to start running out because you're actually using that to tie, so you're wasting, you know, that thread as you're going. So that's why I still did 3 strands of it, because this time I'll use this one, and maybe the next time I come back to the bunch, I'll use the next one or another one, but you can always tell which one was worked because it's going to be shorter, right? Right now they're all the same length. But when you start working them, they're going to, you know, start being up here, up here, up here as you go. So just pick one out that you want to work with. It doesn't matter. And when I said that people, most time they say on these kinds of bracelets that you should do groups of 5, that means 10 ties, right? So 5 hitch knots, that means 10 half hitches, right? So you're always, when you're doing your knots, doing two things. If it's forward, forward, backward, backward, forward, backward, backward, forward, whatever, but you're always doing 2. So I'm going to hold this. Essentially, this is your non-working string. You're going to work your string, this one, over all of them, like as a bunch, okay? So we're doing our 4, because I'm doing forward knots, going under the whole group, pulling it up and tight. And the reason I said tight is because that's starting it, and I want it to be really close to that knot. So there we go. That's the number 1. And number 2 to finish it off, right? And essentially what happens is, obviously your thread wants to go to over here, and that's fine. So that's 1, right? We're doing 5. So I'm going to do it again. Essentially just count 10, right? So 1, 2 to finish it. 3, 4, that's actually 2 of them. 5, 6, which makes 3 hitch knots. 7, 8, that means that's 4 full hitch knots. 9, and 10, and that means 5 forward knots. So when you see them say 5, they really mean 10 because you're doing, you know, whatever. Now I'm going to bring them all together again, and I'm going to pick the next color, which for me is black. And as I'm picking it, I'll pick this one because it's kind of more out on the outside and it seems easier to access. But whatever your color is, you have to grab it. Now hold the bunch again, even the one that we just worked with, right, in your hand. I'm going to get a little bit closer. I don't know if that helps. And so now this whole bunch is in my hand. We're going to work with this one. And again, all forward, if that's what you're doing. If you want to switch to backward, go ahead. But like I said, it might make it kind of wonky. So once you've chosen what you're going to do, I would just keep doing it. Once I make the first one with the Chinese staircase, I always just make sure this is bumped up really close. So that was 1, 2, 3, 4. I can tell this is slipping. 5. You want to have the same tension just so it turns out really nicely. So if you need to reclip or reassess that, that's fine. I think I said 5, right? 6. 7. 8. 9. And 10. Okay, so that's 5 full hitch knots. I'm going to take this out. Well, you know, let's do one more group, and then I'll show you what this looks like and then why it's called Chinese staircase. But now, again, I'm going to go back to the rainbow one. And if I look at the end of my knots, my thread, there's going to be one rainbow one that's shorter, see? And one black one that's shorter, because we just use those. So this time I'm going to pick a different one, a different rainbow color one. You can keep using the same one, but it's going to keep getting shorter and shorter, so it's nice to just switch off. Okay, so this one is full length. I'm going to use that again. 5 hitch knots or forward knots. 1, 2. These work up so fast and they look so cute. 3. 4. 5. 6. 7. 8. 9. 10. And that's what I'm saying, you don't want to pull them too tight because you want that length that you're creating. So I'm going to pull this out really quickly and show you what that looks like. And so you can see like the little staircase look like, ooh, like a little spiral staircase. They're not going to completely match up because where I started this next one, it's just going to start where it is. And then this guy, see how this guy isn't really twisting? So what I can do is hold this and just give it a little like, help it out. Okay, if you ever notice that. Just give it a little twist and now it's twisting better. Okay, and then put that back in the group and pick out a black one and do it again. 10, pick out a rainbow one or whatever your colors are. Whatever color patterns. Again, I like to use 6 strands, even if you don't, well, no, yeah, I just like to use 6 strands. I was going to say, even if you don't use the other ones, you just want that thickness in there, right? You're making it cording, basically. But, you know, whatever. And if it's too loose, you can kind of adjust it, like push it up. You kind of want the blocks to be about the same length. I mean, we're not going to inspect it so well, but that's something to think about, okay? So as you keep going, stop whenever you like. So generally 9-inch bracelets or 8.5, 9, you know, if you're making for a kid something smaller, like for me, this ended up fitting me really well. But for my daughter, it's a little big. So I was like, I either keep going and round it, make it a double. But I'm just going to use this one for me. I'll make her this one. So I can tell you from knot to where I finish, this is 8 inches, and that works really well for me. I don't know if I have the biggest wrist or whatever, but I mean, if I match it up, it's exactly 8 inches there. So I have all this left. So I'm just going to show you how to finish this very simply and easily. I mean, you can just leave the strings like this, to be honest, if you want. When I end it, I do want to make another knot because I don't want this one to have a knot and the other side not to, because it just doesn't look the same. So let's give ourselves a knot. So you can just keep working that Chinese staircase, your forward knots or your backward knots, whatever it is that you decide to do. I'm going to get this close to my work because I want it to look like the other one, right? And give it a nice little pull. I'm going to cut these off, although you don't have to. I mean, you can just wait till you're done braiding, but then you have all this string. So I'm going to cut it essentially the same length of this one, more or less. And we're just going to braid it. So, I'm sorry, on top of emergency vehicles passing here and there. I have like allergies right now. So I'm going to tape this here just so you can see what I'm doing, but generally I would stick it down, however. I'm just going to separate these into bundles of 2. There are 6, just like in the one I just showed you. And so 2, 2, and 2, whatever 2 you like. You know, if you want Roy G. Biv, I would say red and orange, and then yellow and green, and whatever, but I just grab 2 at a time, I don't care. And I would just braid it. You can also do a twist ending, which is very cute. But we'll talk about endings in a different video, beginnings and endings. I think that'll be a good thing for its own video. So again, I just randomly grabbed a couple. I'm going to keep braiding, and hopefully you know how to braid. That would be good. And I'll be right back once I get towards the end. You can braid all the way to the end, but you know, you're going to knot it up anyway. So I have like 1.5 inches or so. Bring this around and try to get it as close to the free thread ends that aren't braided as you can. So when I pull this, I'm going to try to keep the braiding up here at the top so our work is shown. It doesn't take that long to braid though, so it's not the biggest deal. And pull that down as much as you can and give it a nice tight end, and you know, I can just cut that off. And I'll do the same thing with the other side. Just braid that up. It looks really cute. So I'm going to braid this and I'll be right back. Okay guys, so cute little bracelet, and I mean, these work up so fast. I mean, literally I would say 20-30 minutes, to be honest. Things like this, like alpha bracelets, take a little bit longer. If you're curious of where I get these patterns, I mean, I did like Mario ones, I've done princess ones, I mean, just so many name ones. I have a video for an alpha bracelet to do names, and that's just 2 colors. But these guys, obviously, you're carrying colors in the back and doing all this stuff. Again, friendship, I think it's -bracelets.net is a really great resource. They have tons of patterns. Look up 8 gigabyte patterns or 8 gig patterns. You can do this with crochet. You can do this with knitting. You can, you know, the same little patterns you can transfer over to so many different projects. So I went wild making huge crochet blankets with like little motifs that are just like granny squares, and then in the different colors. So when you put them together, you know, you do blue, 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 white, white, you know, white, black, whatever it is, and you just attach them in that order, and you have this cute Afghaner blanket that has these patterns in it. So you can do it on bracelets and bring it into your other kind of weaving patterns and things. So I'll finish this guy up. I do want to show you that this is a little bit different. These are different brands of embroidery thread, and this one's much tighter, even though it has 6, than like this one, and it's just the way it turned out. I mean, that's just what it is. So anyway, I'll keep working that. Hopefully you can try out your chevron and just try out your knots, and so many resources out there. So thanks for watching, guys. I hope this gives you kind of a straightforward view of what the knots look like, and how to do them, and how to read those patterns if you end up being more advanced. If you already know your knots, you can definitely check out that friendship-bracelets.net, and you can find tons of patterns that, you know, these like diamond head, all these different patterns. But anyway, all right guys, thanks for watching. I'll see you at the next one. Bye now.